Okay, welcome to another video, and today we've got a distribution that I've been a big fan of for a very long time now, so it's made many appearances on the channel, and that is Nitrux. So as of just a few days ago, they released their latest update, bringing us up to version 1.6.0. Now I've had a quick glance at the release announcement, and from what I've seen so far, this is one of the best updates they've released in a while. So what we'll do, we'll unpack some of the newer features in this release announcement, and then we'll jump straight into it and get this installed. Now before we get straight into the new features, for those of you who are unaware, Nitrux is a Debian based distribution which uses OpenRC. Now as far as the new kernels, there's quite a lot to choose from their own default repository. So they've updated the LTS 5.4 to 5.4.143, and they also offer the mainline LTS and non-LTS kernels from their repository, as well as Licorice and Azanmod. And we also have the Linux Libre LTS and non-LTS kernels, again all available from their own repository. So they've updated KDE Plasma to version 5.22.4, Frameworks to version 5.85.0, and KDE Gear to version 21.08.0. The default web browser of Firefox has been upgraded to version 91.0.2, and they've updated the Heroic Games launcher to version 1.9.2. Heroic, of course, being an open source launcher for Epic Games. They've updated LibreOffice to version 7.2.04, and they've updated the MailWe Kit to version 2.0.1 and the MailWe Apps to version 2.0.0. And the MailWe Kit suite of applications are convergent applications that work across different devices. And looking at the list of apps here, there's a few new ones that I'm not quite familiar with, so we'll check all those out once we are fully installed. And there's an alternative web browser available from the repository of Soul. And now we're moving on to what I think is probably the most important new feature of this release and will be very important in future releases for Nitrux, and that is the NX Software Center. So Nitrux heavily utilizes and prioritizes AppImages as a way to distribute their applications, and up until now there hasn't been a nice sort of GUI front-end store for new users to go ahead and search for and install new applications, and that is what NX Software Center is. And another cool thing about it is it's also built using the MailWe Kit, so I'm very happy about that. And it's going to, at the moment, grab the app images as well as the data displayed from the app image hub. And they've also added some new touchpad gestures, but at the moment it only works with X11. So I think what we'll do, we'll also install this to the laptop and we'll check out the new touchpad gestures towards the end and see how they work on Nitrux. They've added power level 10K is the default ZSH theme, and they've added their classic console color scheme to the correct path, where applications that use QML term widget and can display it as an option, such as Station, which is their terminal emulator and is again a MailWe Kit application. Now we also have two new Kwin scripts to use, which are Maximize and Force Blur. So Maximize, as the name suggests, is a Kwin script to mimic the sort of workflow of maximizing new windows on Mac OS. So what that's going to do is maximize windows will now move to a new virtual desktop and then move back to the original desktop if restored or closed. And I can think of a few ways how that workflow will be quite useful, so we'll check that out. And then Force Blur will apply a blur effect on user specified windows. Now they've removed Plasma Discover and LMMS from the default installation, and I think that makes quite a bit of sense, especially Plasma Discover, as they do prioritize AppImages and they now have their own store for that anyway. Of course, this can all be reinstalled if you need it. So that's pretty much all of the new features in the release announcement. I will leave a link to this in the description below for those of you who want to read a little bit more. It's now available to download with an ISO size of around about 3 GB. With that being said, let's jump into the live environment and get this installed. And here we are. Now, as always, we are going to be installing this natively, but for those of you who do like to skip the installation parts of these videos, there'll be timestamps down below, which will take you straight to the installed desktop. And here we are in the nicely themed full screen installer. So first up, we're going to press this button here to choose our language, which for me is going to be British English, and next, which is going to be our location. Again, I'm going to go for Europe and then scroll all the way down till we hit London, and then jump to the next step. So for keyboard model, I'm just going to leave it on the default and go to the next step, which is going to be your user account. So we're just going to call this one Nitrux, and then we're going to type in our password as well as our root password, and I'm going to check this box right here to log in automatically without asking for a password to get us straight into the desktop. And here's where we're going to choose to partition our drives. Now by default, another cool thing about Nitrux is that it uses Btrfs as its default file system. However, something not so cool about this installer at the moment is cutting off the first line of the actual installer window here, which is where we're going to choose our drive. Fortunately, we can just about select this bar here and I can drop down to the Kingston SSD. Now we are going to do an erase disk and let it use the default partition layout for Nitrux, which is going to be 2 partitions, one for your EFI and the rest all assigned to your root partition, of course using the ButterFS file system. So you'll notice there's no swap partition, and I don't think it will make you a swap file by default either. So for those of you who want to swap, you might want to go into manual partitioning and create a swap partition. Okay, so here's our summary, so we can make sure we've made no mistakes before we commit to an install. So I'm going to press install now and pause the video here and come back once it's finished. And there we have it. Installation has completed without any issue at all, taking just a few minutes on my machine. So we can now reboot and check out our freshly installed Nitrux system. And here we are at our freshly installed Nitrux desktop. So I've already started it up once to see if there's any updates we needed to get, and I've done a quick reboot so we can see how much RAM we're using on a fresh boot before we make any changes to our system. Now Nitrux does include a lot of command line tools included in the base install, one of them being htop. So let's have a look at what we've got here. So out of the box on a fresh boot, we're using just under 800 MB at around about 782, which isn't too bad. And then just beneath that, we can see that we do indeed not have any swap file or partition configured out of the box. Now the kernel that we're currently using by default is the Linux Nitrux 5.14.0 kernel. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with the default desktop look and feel and play around with some of the different workflows. Now for me personally, I've always found Nitrux to be one of the better looking, most attractive distributions out there, and nothing looks out of place. Everything kind of looks like it belongs. So by default, the standard layout is a panel at the top and a dock at the bottom, and these aren't traditional sort of KDE panels. It's actually using the Latte system, which we'll go into in just a moment. Now at the very left hand side, we have our application launcher, which is going to spread all of your applications across different pages like so. And as you can see out of the box, it really isn't very much bloated at all, and it only really includes the applications you're going to need to get up and running. And for the most part, these are going to be AppImages with some MailWiki applications thrown in. Now we have a search bar at the top and a couple of buttons here for power and locking. Now if we right click on any of these applications and add to favorites, the first page is where all of your favorites are going to reside. So as you can see, we've added Firefox to our favorites applications, and now we can also remove that. And now we're going to go to the other side of our panel, which is where you're going to find your clock, notifications and all of that good stuff. And they're all going to open up with a little sort of widget shade from the right hand side of the screen, which I think works quite nicely. Now pressing the downwards button will then get you into your other status and notifications for things like Bluetooth, battery and brightness and volts, which are sort of encrypted volts, night color control, KDE Connect, so you can wirelessly sync your Android devices with your notifications and all of that good stuff. And then we have our clipboard. And now we also have our sort of current connections, and again our notification center, NX notifications, again opening up on the right hand side. And let's just go ahead and clear all of our notifications, and as you can see, we have devices down at the bottom as well. Okay, and then at the bottom we have our dock here. So this is the standard dock that they use with Latte, very nicely themed with the rounded corners and slightly raised from the bottom side of the screen. Now I'm someone that really does quite like this layout, but if you're someone who prefers just a single panel, another cool thing about Nitrux, they really have considered the different ways people work. So if you right click on your top panel and go to layouts, you can see there's a few other layouts that you can choose from. And the one that I think most people will use if they don't like the default is just going to be the standard bottom panel, which is going to condense everything into the one panel at the bottom of your screen. Again, very nicely themed with the rounded corners, not quite edge to edge, and again slightly raised from the bottom side of your screen with your application launcher in the very left hand side. And then these quick launches are quite cool. So if you click one, for example, it's going to remove the sort of launch icon and it's going to open its own application window bar there with the title of the application there as well. And this is of course Station, their default terminal, which is a MailWiki application. And again, it's looking very different from the last time I checked it out, so we'll spend a little bit of time on Station towards the end as well. Now I really do quite like a panel and a dock, so I'm going to put it back on the default layout, and then we'll keep moving through some of the other new features. But before we do that, let's go ahead and check out some different wallpapers, because the dark wallpaper's making it a bit hard to see what's going on. So let's go to Configure Desktop and Wallpaper. And then they've always had very nice wallpapers included out of the box, and I don't think that's going to change here. So let's go ahead and choose a slightly lighter wallpaper. Okay, and then now as you can see, the very nice blur there with minimal noise in the transparency for your things like your panel and all of that good stuff. And I think it just does look very nice out of the box. Now, as well as sort of configuring your desktop, a right click also has the option now of open with Index, which is their default file manager. Again, that's a MailWiki application, so we'll check that out in just a moment as well. Now out of the box, we do have some keyboard shortcuts assigned to sort of quick tiling from the left and right hand sides of your screen, as well as the corners, so that's all set up for you. Index itself looks like it's changed from quite a bit from the last time I've seen it as well, so we'll check this out in just a moment too. Now using your left super key and in directionals, you can do all of your splitting with a 4-way split in the corners and all of that good stuff, and then we can just drag it back central to then restore it to its original size. Now in the release announcement, we learned about the new Kwin scripts, with one of them in particular being the Maximize new script, which is going to mimic the sort of way that macOS sort of manages its full screen applications. So if we go into window management and go into Kwin scripts, we can see we do have quite a few here, and one that I showed off in another version of Nitrux a little while ago is Cronkite, which is going to give you sort of tiling windows on your KDE desktop, which is very cool. So we have Force Blur, which is disabled out of the box. That's one of the new Kwin scripts. And then we have Maximize, which is enabled out of the box. Now I think what we're going to do to see how this works is we're going to add a widget into our top panel of the virtual desktop pager, so we can see exactly what it's going to be doing with the workspaces when we maximize applications. So let's go to Add Widgets, and we're going to just search for virtual desktop to get the pager, and we're just going to drag it to the right hand side here, just left of our status and notifications. So we can see by default it's given us 4 in a nice sort of horizontal workflow there. So let's go ahead and open up a few applications and start maximizing those applications and see how that works. Let's just close this view for now. Okay, so let's start with Index. So keep an eye on the top panel here with the pager. So as we said, we've got 4 by default. When we maximize this window, it should create a new workspace, and then when we restore it to its original size, it should be dynamic, so it should remove the new workspace and put the window in the original workspace that it came from. So let's give that a go. So pressing the middle button here for maximize, and there you go. So we've now got 5 workspaces. Okay, I really like that. That's quite cool. And now let's try and restore that to its original size. And now, as you can see, it's removed the additional workspace or virtual desktop, and now put us at the very beginning where we started off. So that's very cool. So I think that would be quite a good workflow for someone like me who often has GIMP in a sort of workspace as well as Kdenlive in another. So we can just very easily full screen them to get all of the nice sort of real estate that our screen can provide us, and then we can very easily switch to the different workspaces or virtual desktops with either the keyboard shortcuts or the new touchpad gestures. We'll check them out in a moment. I'm not sure how they all work. So let's go ahead and just sort of full screen a few more now and see how it manages multiple applications. So again, we've got new workspace. Let's go back to Index, and let's full screen Index, and there we've got another. Okay, cool. I really like that. So imagine you've got, say, Kdenlive on this one here, and you've got an image or an overlay you're working on in GIMP. You can very easily just jump between the 2 full screen applications like so, and I can imagine myself really enjoying this kind of workspace. And it's going to put your action title sort of buttons at the top of the panel at the left hand side for things like close, restore, and all of that good stuff. And again, restoring it to its original size will then remove that workspace and put it back into the original place that it was in. Okay, cool. I really like that sort of Kwin script. I've never used that before, but I think that's very cool. Now, just quickly jumping into the system settings, you'll notice they have a few things included here as well. So for backups, it's going to use the cups package to manage your sort of backups on KDE. And then if we go back, we also have their NX firewall, very simple window to then manage your firewall built into the system settings, which is especially good for a new user because the first thing they'll probably go to is the system settings, and then they'll see that right there and know exactly what they need to do. Very nice. Now, before we go through some of the applications and spend a particular bit of time on the new inclusions of the NX Software Center, let's go into the appearance and see what's going on with the theming. So for the default theming, they're using their own very nicely designed Nitrux theming, and there's a couple of different variations. So by default, it's going to use the dark theme, but they also have the Nitrux mix, which is going to mix up the light and dark elements. So things like your panel and your application launcher are still going to be in the dark theme, but then your application windows are going to be using the light theme. We didn't have just the standard Nitrux theme, so let's go ahead and just check that one out quickly before we jump back into the dark theme, as I'm more of a dark theme kind of guy. And there we go. So our panel hasn't quite changed colors. So let's do a quick log in and log back out to see if that will take effect, and then we'll jump back into the default theme and start checking out some of these new features. And while we're here, we'll quickly show you the default look of the login screen. And as of course, if you go to the left hand side, you can see that they do have a wailing session, but like they mentioned in the release announcement, the touchpad gestures currently only work on X11, so we'll be sticking with X11 throughout this video. And here we are with the light theme, and it does look actually very nice with this particular wallpaper. Again, very nice transparency with minimal noise with the blur. And let's just open up an application and see what that looks like now with the light theme. Nice, I like it a lot. Now you're going to notice this applications folder here, and this will become more sort of apparent why that's there when we check out the new application store NX Software Center. Now let's spend a little bit of time going over the default applications, and like I said before, they really don't bloat things out on Nitrux, so you shouldn't find a whole lot of fluff that's unnecessary that you want to uninstall from your base install. So first up we have Arc, we then have Buho, which is a note application from the MailWeKit suite of applications. And then we also have Clip, which again is another MailWeKit application. Communications, we have Firefox as our default web browser, GIMP, and then we have the Heroic Game Launcher, which I must confess isn't something I've really spent a whole lot of time using myself. But for those of you who like to sort of play your Epic games and all of that good stuff, it's good to see that pre-installed on Nitrux out of the box and ready to go. There is a new version. Do you want to update? I do not. Let's keep it moving. So let's close that off. And then next up, we have Index, which is our default file manager. Again, a MailWe suite of applications. I'll spend a little bit of time in just a moment looking at how this all works out of the box. But let's just keep it moving for now. We then have Inkscape, install itch.io, we have Kcalc, and then we have Kdenlive installed out of the box. So we've just launched Kdenlive, and as you can see there, we do have it working with the full global menu support, which is very nice to see. So we can get to all of the sort of settings included in Kdenlive straight from within our top panel. Now what I want to quickly do is just full screen this and see how it looks now with the new sort of maximized workspacing and all of that good stuff. Brilliant, I really like that. So again, it's created us a new workspace right here. And if we had another window of an application open on there, we could do a bit of work there, jump back over to there. And I really think that workflow would be quite useful. And again, it's going to move your title buttons to the top left-hand side just before the global menu, giving you all of that new screen real estate on your screen. So you've got a lot more room to work with. Perfect. We then have Quantum Manager for theming, and then we have LibreOffice, which is the new version. So if we go ahead and open that up and start a new write a document, let's make sure it is working with the automatic spell checking out of the box with our dictionary, and it is indeed. And again, we have the full global menu support looking all nice out of the box. And if you full screen an application, I didn't quite mention it, you'll notice that your top panel then transitions into a solid color, which is going to leave you with a few distractions. Let's close that off and keep it moving. I do not want to save that. Okay, we then have Nitro Share, which I think first gained sort of prominence on Linux Mint, and it's a cool little application. So if you've got multiple computers on the same network and they're all running this application of Nitro Share, you can very easily share sort of documents and files in between them with a nice little GUI of Nitro Share. We then have Nota, which is another MailWeKit application. And then we have NX Software. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because I'm very intrigued to see how this all works and integrates AppImages into our system. But before that, we also have Pix, Shelf, Spectacle, Station. We have the System Monitor, so we can quickly see the sort of system resources and all of that good stuff with a nice little overview on the main page. And then we also have our system settings, Wave and Wine, which is also an app image. Now I do have a video, I think my previous Nitrux video, I went into the sort of Wine app image and how that all works. So if you want to see a quick demo of that, go ahead and watch that video and you can see how that Wine app image is working on Nitrux. But now at the moment, I'm most intrigued about is the NX Software Center. And here we go. So let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. Let's just full screen it or maximize it. Nice, very nicely designed. So we have a few little sort of slides at the top here. We can just drag it to go through sort of featured applications. That's very cool. And then we have all of the categories right here. And then we have the MailWe app. So it also includes the MailWe apps here as well. So that's cool. So it's got the sort of app image applications and all of the MailWe applications as well. So that's very nice to see that that's all ready to go out of the box. And then we have newest and most recent packages, popular in games, popular in audio, most popular. Okay, so it's a very well designed actual front end for the store here. Now let's test it out with installing an application. So as we know, it's going to be grabbing the app images mainly from the app image hub. So let's jump into something like, let's say, internet, and let's see what it gives us. So we have the Firefox app image, and then we also have the Brave browser. So let's test an installation with the Brave browser. So we're going to select it, and then we have a button here of get, and then it gives us some information here. So it's an app image, it's x86-64, stable release, software and app. And if we scroll down, we've got a bit of information here with the screenshots. Okay. And then it tells us how many times it's been downloaded, as well as the sort of ratings or how many reviews it's got. Brilliant. Okay, let's press get. And then it's going to go down to the package. So we're then going to select that. That's then going to go into the install bar here of the progress. A very nice animation. Cool. And then we get a little notification letting us know that the installation has complete. And now your app is ready to go. So let's go into a different desktop. Let's just go over to this one here. And now it should be integrated into our app launcher. And there we go. So we have the Brave web browser. And now what we're going to do is if we go into our index here, now we change the view. Let's go back to a different kind of view. Let's go to the grid. Now, if we go to applications, which is this folder here, this is where it's going to put all of the new sort of .app images. So the actual app images themselves, not the sort of desktop icon. So we should now just be able to go and click Brave and it should launch the Brave web browser without any issues or whatsoever. And there we go. Welcome to Brave. I'm not going to set it as my default and okay. Okay, cool. That's really cool. I'm very happy that they have now got a nice store to actually install new applications. It just makes it especially useful for a new user who doesn't know what an app image is or doesn't really care what an app image is and just wants to get the applications integrated within their system and be able to launch them without any issues at all. So definitely a very good addition to the Nitrux distribution. And then we have progresses here as well. Okay, brilliant. I'm very happy with the NX Software Center. Now, before we jump over to the laptop and test out the new touchpad gestures, I do just want to spend a minute or two on the station and index applications because they do look a little bit different from the last time I checked them out. So again, very nice and attractive and well-themed file manager here. So I do believe by default it is a single click to sort of activate items, and we're currently in the grid view, but if we press this button here, we can then get to the list view and we can also sort by type, date, etc. and all of that good stuff. And then we can do a split view. Very cool. So that's going to open it at the bottom. So if we full screen that, we now have a nice split view where we can drag things over and all of that good stuff. And we can actually resize it. Okay, that's very cool. Let's get out of the split view. Now, what I'm more intrigued about is this left panel here that I don't think was present the last time I checked it out. So we've got a few sort of quick launch buttons here, as well as your usual stuff like your network, waste bin, etc. So we have a button here that's going to toggle or hide the sidebar itself, and let's go back into the sidebar and see what we've got. So we have a favorites button here, so I guess what we can do is right click on a sort of folder or file and then go to add to favorites, and then we can just better press that heart and then jump to anything that we've given the heart to for our favorites. Okay, that's very useful. And then we have a button called tags. So I'm going to imagine this home button will take us to our home directory. It will indeed. And I guess we can now tag things. So we've got a plus button here, so we can add a tag. So let's just call it test, like so. So we've got a new test tag. So let's go back into our home folder, and we're now going to add this tag with the tag of test. Okay, and we can also color code it as well. So favorites is red by default. So let's press save. And now if we go back into our tags and jump into test. Okay, cool. So if you're working on a particular project, you could tag it with something like projects and then jump straight into what you're working from and carry on from where you've left off. That's very cool. And then we also have desktop. So that's going to take you to your desktop folder, documents, downloads, music, pictures, and then videos. Okay, cool. So index is coming along quite nicely. Now let's jump over to station and see what's going on with station. Okay, so we've got the new sort of color scheme and theming here with the ZSH. So we've got some little buttons down at the bottom here, which could be quite handy depending on what sort of device you're on. If you're on something with a touch screen and you wanted to go to the last command or go up or down, we can just press these buttons here, and then we have tabs. Let me test something. Let's type htop. Let's close that and let's see what these up or down buttons do. Is it just there we go. So then you can cycle through your previous commands. That's very cool. We then have tab, escape, control, Alt, Control C, and then we also have a little free buttons here to go for function keys, nano, control modifiers, navigation, and favorite, and then we can also add shortcuts. Okay, cool. So I think what we'll do is we're going to jump over to the laptop and check out these new touchpad gestures. So I've been using the touchpad gestures on my laptop for a little while now, and once you get the hang of them, they are very simple and easy to use. So it's going to use 3 fingers for the most part, with swipes either left and right and up or down. With horizontal swipes, you can go to different desktops, and then using up or down on touchpad, you can then get into things like your overview, where you can spread your applications and see your virtual workspaces to the right hand side, which is a very nice way of doing things with the touchpad gestures. So I think that is where I'm going to wrap up with my refreshed look of Nitrux, this time featuring the most recent version of 1.6.0. All in all, I think this is a brilliant little update. Now, like I said in the beginning, I've always been quite a big fan of the way Nitrux does things, especially with the prioritization of app images, but it's always been a little bit hard to recommend to new users. But with the inclusion of NX Software Center, I think that goes a long way of making it a bit easier to recommend to those types of users. Just having an easy one-stop place to install your app images is definitely something that Nitrux has needed for quite a while, so I'm very happy to see it in this newest version. And I actually quite like the new KWin extension for the maximizing of the windows in the new workspaces. And it's always good to have some nice touchpad gestures if you are a laptop user. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe. And if you've really enjoyed it, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. Join the Discord, there's a link in the description below. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.